This is a video that I have been waiting to make for literally 6 months. I'm not gonna lie, this was the very first video essay that I came up with, and I kept it in my Vince essay for way longer than I would like to admit. Basically, up until the moment when I admitted that I was going to have to separate out Season 1 from Season 2, Season 3, and then eventually Season 4. In addition, while I try really hard to stay in the lane of things that I can prove in my video essays, I'm gonna admit that this is one where I just dive into the world of subtext to look at a handful of scenes that are coded and certainly make it seem like everyone's favorite battalion chief could indeed be queer. To be fair, I don't usually make videos about my personal theories. I pride myself on being a respectable source of Fire Country material. I mean, I have fallen down deep rabbit holes with my mom and with ChatGPT as we try to debate things like the meaning of why so many episodes have diabetes in them. However, on my channel, I try to stick to canon. I mean, look at what happened in October. I got so excited about the prospect of, wow, actually what Walter did is felony murder that I put together an entire video essay in like 72 hours and then had to take it down 5 weeks later when they say, oh, actually, Walter did look for Vince, Sharon was just unconscious. And that's the reason why you're not going to hear me say that Vince is queer. You won't hear me say that he slept with the background character Molly, and you definitely won't hear me say that he did not cheat on Sharon with a woman after Riley died. I think it's the most plausible explanation. However, I've been spurred one too many times in media where a secret child comes out, and while I think it's highly unlikely that Vince has a secret child somewhere, I'm not going to entirely rule it out. Queer coding comes from a time when it wasn't acceptable to tell stories about queer characters. Don't get me wrong, it still isn't acceptable to tell stories about queer characters the way you can about straight characters. But because formal censorship once did make it illegal to tell stories, people had to get creative about how to talk about queer people. While the motion picture codes don't exist today formally, most queer reviewers will tell you that doesn't mean we have parody in storytelling. Take two of my favorite examples, Bros and Fantastic Beasts' Secrets of Dumbledore. Bros exists within a very specific subculture of queer culture. All of Bobby's friends are queer or strong allies, and he can't understand a world wherein people aren't very queer forward. As someone who lived this kind of queer culture in rural Iowa, I loved the movie, but it bombed at the box office. Take my other favorite example, Fantastic Beasts: Secrets of Dumbledore. It is a movie that only makes sense if you consider that Dumbledore is in love with Grindelwald and doesn't want him to face consequences. He just wants Grindelwald to stop trying to take over the world. However, when one line was cut from the movie where Jude Law says the word love, the internet lost its mind. And by the way, the censorship didn't even work. If you want proof, go look at the number of Grindelwald fanfics on the Chinese archive of our own. My point here isn't to say that these are the only queer stories or even a representative sample, just that while we love to pretend that we as a society don't need queer coding to tell queer stories anymore, there's clearly a reason queer coding still exists. I want to be clear, in this video I am not showing definitive evidence that Vince is queer, specifically the bisexual flavor. As of the second full week of January, when I'm writing this, it doesn't exist. Instead, I'm going to take the spots that feel like queer coding to me and enumerate them in this video. Actually, I had to take some stuff out of my Mully video because I think it was overly speculative. Also, I know that I said in my Walter video that I think the only explanation for the way that Walter talks about Vince's affair was that it was a same-sex relationship. I still can't consider that definitive proof. I just consider it the first rung on this ladder. Also, while I did watch all of Season 4 for my Arthur spotting video, I did not go rewatch all of Fire Country for this. I just remembered the examples and cross-checked them with my list from July. The first thing on the list, and an event that is mentioned twice in this series, is Vince's cheating after Riley died. I talked about this quite a bit in my Walter video, but to give a recap, we find out at the end of my robe that at some point after Riley died, Vince had an affair and went to his father about it. At some point between the affair and at the end of my rope, Sharon finds out about it, and she states that she forgave him because it was a mistake. The reason why I put this as maybe queer coding is not just how Walter is using the moment of the affair in a way that makes you think there is something worse about it other than the fact that it happened after his daughter died. See my explanation in the Walter video. But the way it is or isn't talked about. Vince has never said a single thing about this affair. Not when Walter brings it up, not when Luke brings it up, and not when Sharon brings it up in the season 2 episode, See You Next Apocalypse. As a third point, I also think it's kind of pointed that both times that Sharon brings it up, she specifically mentioned that it was with another woman, and she's in semi-public spaces. First in Walter's hospital room, and later in the bunk room of Station 42. Which is like, why do you need to say it was with a woman, Sharon? We have 2 more spots of potential queer coding between these 2 episodes. One in Something's Coming, and one in Like Breathing Again. In Something's Coming, Vince and Manny visit Bodhi in prison while Sharon is off at the Pines fire. Well, sure, you could say that these are Bodhi's 2 father figures going to visit him in prison. What's queer about that? I would raise my eyebrow at you if you did so. Also, Manny's line about, look at your dad, look what you're putting him through, definitely reads like Manny saying, look at how upset you're making your mom. Which makes things even worse for Bodhi. It ends up being Jake who has to save the day by convincing Bodhi not to get into a death match with Sleeper. In the next episode, Like Breathing Again, Vince says, how did Jake do it? Is he really just that charming? Which, not entirely gay, but kinda gay. My favorite of these actually comes in Too Many Unknowns, when Jake's pending engagement proposal is spilled by Sharon. Manny goes to Vince to ask for help becoming a captain again, and Vince jokes, no, Manny, I can't be your date to Jake's wedding. While some may say that this is just ribbing between 2 men who are comfortable in their sexuality, Manny just brushes it aside in a way that feels like he is very uncomfortable, and I personally find hilarious. I will admit that this next episode is small and not specifically about Vince, but it is about Sharon, and it is in the same episode, so I say it counts. During this episode's rescue, we see Sharon yell at a guy named Sonny when he talks about regret over homophobia towards his brother Sean. Sean is currently trapped inside the building where there was a gas spill, and this is season 2. Sharon says very pointedly, what's the problem, Sonny? Doesn't he deserve to be happy? And then at the end of the episode, Jake encourages Sean to talk to Sonny, who is now in the hospital, but like most stories in Fire Country, we don't know exactly how this ends. And this story itself is a very stereotypical queer story to exist in Fire Country. Well, I don't want to say Fire Country is the queer firefighting show. I guess that belongs to 911 Lone Star. It happens quite a bit that we have queer stories. We have Aiden, whose story is about moving to a small town and adjusting after living in a big city, alongside being a love interest. We have the 2 dads in the season 1 finale who almost die in a mudslide but manage to protect their son Dylan. Francine shows up in seasons 3 and 4 to have a story about having a lot of expectations for Eve that Eve herself does not consent to. By the way, this makes me regret putting her so high on my favorite queer people list. We also have Logan, who admittedly, yes, does have a coming out story, but plot twist, Cole is just excited that his kid is asking him for relationship advice. So, yes, this is a slightly stereotypical story, but not as stereotypical as other queer stories. These last 2 examples that I'm going to mention are more symbolic, but when taken with all the above, they don't quite seem like coincidence. In Welcome to the Cult, Walter helps Bodhi cheat by telling him that there is a dummy in the closet. Walter justifies this by saying that it's the program's fault for always stashing the dummy in the same place. Vince defends the choice because he says scared kids hide in closets. 60 seconds later, Vince is talking about how as a child he was scared and he tried not to do that to Bodhi. There's one more to talk about, and that's in I Do It Again, the season 3 finale. This is the episode where Vince dies, and it's also a 2-parter. In the first half of the 2-parter, we meet Otto, who, while not explicitly gay, he is certainly flamboyant in a queer-coded way, And he lets us know that Walter doesn't stand a chance in hell with Celia because she's a class act. Otto is the only one not evacuated, and Walter manipulates Bodhi into going back into the nursing home to save him. They find him asleep in a closet. And by the way, does it bother anyone else that we don't know if he died or not? You're probably asking how this relates to Vince. It's a little absurd, but first of all, Vince does technically die saving Otto, right? Bodhi and Walter go in for Otto, Vince has to go in after them, and then dies when Walter has a dementia episode after they've gotten out. Vince then has to save him, leading to Vince's death. But I also can't help think what a weird coincidence it is that Otto's nickname is Major, and in the army, a major is one rank above captain. Meanwhile, in Cal Fire, battalion chief is one rank above captain. It's something that I probably wouldn't put on this list, except for the fact that it's already pretty long. Okay, now the last thing on this list, I'll admit, is probably not intentional, but I have to tell you, I got pretty gosh darn excited when they dropped the season trailer for season 4, which officially announced Vince's death on September 23rd, which is Bisexual Visibility Day. I know that the official video on CBS says September 24th, but it was reposted on the TV Promos YouTube channel on September 23rd, so that's your proof for you. I know it's probably nothing, but you have to admit that they could have dropped this trailer 4 days earlier during the CBS promos night, and they didn't, which makes it seem a little sus. And also, they did premiere Sheriff Country in the middle of the week on September 24th, therefore making it very convenient for them to drop the trailer on September 23rd. But again, this is just speculation. It all probably means nothing. I am participating in the age-old fandom tradition of making characters seem a little queer just because we can. But I mean, isn't it just a little bit fun to imagine that if Vince had to be cheating on someone, it wasn't some random unknown woman or Renee, God, I can't think of a worse person for him to have cheated with, but that's another story. But it was actually like Molly or Arthur. This is fandom. Not everything needs to be perfectly aligned with canon. Just go, this is kind of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have been wanting to make it for a really long time. And I very intentionally don't make theory videos, but I do make videos pointing out patterns. And frankly, after I noticed the Sharon being suicidal pattern in season 1, and then they paid it off here a couple of episodes ago, I thought that it was time that I got to just indulge in a little bit of speculative pattern spotting. I'm going to be taking next week off because I'm working on rebuilding my buffer. In October, I had several weeks buffer to be able to take a break whenever I needed to. And by the time we got to Eve's video, I literally had to do a saving throw to make sure that it got up on time. I'm hoping to get at least 3 videos done before the time Fire Country comes back. In 2 weeks, you're going to be seeing what I call a sausage making video. Editing Leia here. Actually, it's going to be a video explaining the Sable Ridge fire. And then after that, you'll see, because I do seem to change my mind week to week. All right. Bye, guys.